So when we're accustomed to thinking about military education, professional military education or PME, we usually have this a very specific image in our minds.
Right. It's slow, it's deliberate.
Exactly. You go to a residential course for a year, you're spending weeks debating the failures and, the successes of historical figures, studying Clausewitz, analyzing these case studies on paper.
It's all reflection.
Hindsight. It is. It's all theory and hindsight. But what happens if that entire model is just, well, inadequate for forging the kind of high-speed, high-stakes judgment that you need in modern warfare?
And that is the absolute core, the philosophical question that our source material today is trying to answer. They outline something pretty radical, the agentic learning framework.
And this isn't just a small update.
No, not at all. This is not an incremental update to a war simulator. It's a system designed to fundamentally forge command judgment through what they call high-frequency, consequence-bearing decision-making.
That phrase is key, consequence-bearing.
It is. It takes that slow reflection of the classroom and just compresses it, demanding instant, coherent action, under incredible duress.
So our mission today is to really unpack this entire pretty intricate architecture for you. We're going to get into the deep why behind this whole pedagogy, the specific critique this system makes against current training, the detailed multi-level scenarios that are designed not just to test commanders, but to specifically break them and force them to rebuild how they make decisions.
And maybe the most fascinating part.
Yeah, and I think this is it. We're going to explore the surprisingly human architecture of the AI generals themselves, which shifts the whole learning process from, passive reading about history to actively executing and being assessed on competence.
But we absolutely have to define what agentic AI means right up front, because it's the centerpiece of all this.
Right. It's not just a chatbot.
Not even close. This is far beyond a smart tool. An agentic AI here is an active, autonomous participant in the learning environment. It might be an adaptive adversary who's literally watching your habits and changing its strategy in the middle of the battle.
Okay.
Or it could be, say, an impatient staff officer who is actively challenging your basic assumptions about logistics or intelligence and demanding clarity from you right now.
Or your boss.
Or it's your demanding commander, like Major General Mitchell, who rigidly follows a 7-step decision process and will hold you accountable for every single missed detail. This approach just completely shifts assessment away from, say, writing a 5,000-word essay on a historical battle to objectively measuring the quality and the coherence of 100 decisions that you've executed under severe time and information stress.
So before we jump into the architecture itself, let's just nail down that initial takeaway for you, the listener. What is the foundational critique that this framework is making against the current system of professional military education?
The foundational critique is that traditional PME, while it's excellent for teaching doctrinal knowledge and historical context, it provides, and this is their quote, limited opportunity for repeated decision-making under realistic friction, uncertainty, and adversarial pressure.
So you know the theory, but you've never felt the pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it. You might read 100 case studies in a seminar, analyzing what Napoleon should have done. But you never have to actually make the decision yourself over and over and then immediately feel the tactical or the ethical or the logistical consequences of that choice rippling through your virtual forces.
Right.
This framework argues that genuine judgment, that intuitive ability to act decisively when information is incomplete, it's only developed through high-frequency repetition and immediate feedback on failure.
And critically, failure in a safe environment.
In safe, simulated environments. That's the only way it works.
All right, let's unpack that critique of traditional PME in more detail. I mean, it's a pretty bold claim to say that an entire institution, one that's steeped in historical success and tradition, is fundamentally flawed for generating high-pressure judgment.
It is a bold claim.
So what are the core structural problems they really identify in that passive residential PME model?
Well, they point to several interconnected, sort of systemic issues that they believe result in producing officers who are, incredibly knowledgeable but potentially brittle when they're put under severe stress.
Brittle. That's a strong word.
It is. And the first problem is structural. The traditional systems are defined by these time-bound residential courses. It's a finite, episodic structure. Learning just stops when the course ends. It's not continuous professional development, which, is crucial in a field that's this dynamic.
And the teaching method itself, the pedagogy, that seems to be the main target, right?
Absolutely. The pedagogy is Overwhelmingly passive. It really emphasizes the analysis of historical outcomes, what happened, instead of the generation of new real-time outcomes.
Okay, so when a student analyzes, say, the Battle of Gettysburg.
They already know the final results. There's zero uncertainty. They're analyzing a closed system. But in command, you're always operating in an open system where the consequences are constantly evolving based on your actions and, just as importantly, the enemy's reaction.
That distinction, closed analysis versus open execution, that seems to be the absolute key to this whole critique.
It is, and it ties directly into the third problem they identify, the assessment models. Traditional PME often assesses outcomes that favor academic skills over actual executive skills.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they tend to reward compliance, the ability to cite the correct acronyms, excellent presentation skills, writing academically sound papers. They reward performance in a very structured, very low-stress environment. But genuine command competence, what really matters, is the ability to make a timely, coherent decision when the information is incomplete, the clock is ticking, and you are just exhausted. The traditional model often just fails to capture or even measure that capability.
So if a commander submits a, let's say, a flawless written plan, but then fails to execute it decisively under simulated artillery fire, the old system would probably reward the plan. Whereas this agentic AI system would fail the commander based on the quality of their execution.
That is the perfect contrast. The traditional assessment can only tell you if the student knows what to do doctrinally. It really struggles to measure how they feel and how they function when everything is falling apart, when the friction of war actually hits.
Yeah.
The sources argue that this gap is what explains why so many officers can excel in a classroom, but then really struggle when they're faced with true command uncertainty.
Which means the agentic AI ecosystem becomes this necessary catalyst. It can deliver those crucial missing elements at a massive scale that no team of human instructors possibly could. It overcomes both time and resource constraints.
Precisely. Military judgment is posited here as a muscle that has to be continually exercised. It is forged through repetition, the freedom to fail spectacularly in a safe environment, immediate objective feedback, and a constant progressive increase of the complexity of the scenarios.
And a human can't do that at scale.
A human instructor can only grade and facilitate so many simultaneous complex scenarios. But an AI ecosystem, it can deliver those demanding conditions to hundreds or even thousands of learners continuously across years. The AI agents are really the only scalable way to meet that demand for high-frequency, consequence-bearing practice that's so necessary to cultivate intuition and decisive action.
Before we move on, I want to circle back to a point you made about neutrality. The sources use U.S. military constructs, ranks, tanks like the M1A2 Abrams, adversary vehicles like BTR-80s, but they made a really deliberate choice to frame this as purely functional.
Yeah, it's not an endorsement.
Right. It's not a prescriptive endorsement of any one nation's doctrine.
That is a vital and, I think, very intentional distinction made throughout the documentation. They acknowledge that the breadth, depth, and accessibility of U.S. military documentation makes it the most prevalent and detailed reference source available for training the underlying large language models.
It's a practical choice based on data.
It is. If you're training an AI to act like a division commander, well, the most complete and publicly accessible instructions on the nuances of that role, they often come from that documentation. It's a practical necessity that's just rooted in data availability.
But the explicit focus remains entirely on abstracting and exploring the universal principles.
Absolutely. The goal is to explore, and I'm quoting here, universal fundamentals of military problem-solving, command, and judgment that go way beyond any specific national doctrine. We're studying the cognitive structures. How is command intent developed? How are complex decisions structured under uncertainty? How does friction, logistical, technological show up in any hierarchical command structure?
So it's about the how, not the what.
The learner is constantly encouraged to abstract principles from examples rather than just, copying the specific U.S. approach. They are studying a model of command, not a nation's operational handbook.
And that shift from static analysis to this continuous principle-based application means the learning is dynamic, which I think leads us perfectly into the career-spanning structure they propose. This isn't just a single course, is it? It's a continuous, multi-decade pedagogical architecture.
That's right. The framework defines 3 main career stages, and each one is tailored to the cognitive challenges that are appropriate for that level of responsibility. You move from the purely tactical fight all the way up to strategic statecraft.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the early career stage. What does that look like?
The initial phase is focused very heavily on early career. This is typically tactical command, so think O3 level like a captain commanding a company or a battalion task force. Here, the scope is intentionally constrained. It's highly technical,
Just the basics?
mastering the basics. The focus is on three things: mission outcomes, decision coherence at the small unit level, and force preservation. The learning involves interacting with AI higher-ups who give you clear, concise orders, AI subordinates who give you realistic feedback on your execution, and, crucially, adaptive AI adversaries who test your basic tactical maneuvers.
So the goal is just master the small fight.
Master the small fight first. Make sure the officer can competently execute the basics of maneuver and protection before you move on.
So you're learning the procedural steps of combat before you learn the, let's say, conceptual steps of warfare.
Exactly. And once those core skills are really cemented, the officer moves into the mid-career phase. This is arguably the most complex jump because the focus shifts dramatically from leading a single fight to running an entire operation and integrating all the staff functions.
And this is where we see that transition into operational art and staff integration. So how does the AI facilitate that? The rotation through command and the different staff roles like intelligence, logistics, operations.
This is a really critical innovation in the model. The AI is no longer just the enemy or your higher commander. The AI agents are your staff.
Oh, interesting.
So mid-career officers have to rotate through command roles, like battalion commander, and staff roles, like the S3 operations officer or the S2 intelligence officer. And these AI staff agents are designed to be aggressively demanding and, frankly, skeptical. They don't just passively receive your orders.
That pushback.
They actively question your assumptions.
Can you give us an example of that? Like, how does an AI logistics agent challenge a human learner?
Okay, so imagine the learner is acting as the operations officer, and they propose a deep, rapid offensive push. The AI logistics officer, the S4 agent, might immediately interject with something like, "Sir, ma'am, based on the projected tempo and our current consumption rate for fuel and ammunition, we will run out of critical resources for the main effort within 48 hours, and that's not even accounting for combat losses.
Wow.
We require a 24-hour operational pause for resupply, or you have to shift the main effort to the mechanized battalion, which has lower fuel consumption." This forces the learner to prioritize and synchronize efforts across multiple, often conflicting functions.
It makes it real.
It transforms staff work from just a procedural exercise, filling out forms, into a deeply cognitive negotiation with realistic physical and temporal constraints.
That is genuine friction. In a traditional classroom, you might just write, logistics is supported, and then you move on.
Precisely. And if the student ignores that warning, the AI orchestration layer ensures that the simulated logistics penalty kicks in exactly when the clock hits T plus 48 hours, crippling their offensive. This continuous feedback loop just massively accelerates learning about resource management under pressure.
And then finally, we get to the senior level. This is for colonels or general officers 07, 08 level, which demands strategic judgment.
This is the pinnacle of the framework, and it requires the broadest, most expansive simulation environment. The scenarios here are no longer purely tactical or operational. They have to incorporate non-military factors.
So it's not just about the battlefield anymore.
Not at all. The environment expands to include political constraints, potential economic repercussions, managing volatile coalition dynamics with allied forces, and integrating information warfare campaigns.
The sources refer to these as wicked problems. What does that mean in this context?
A wicked problem is a situation where there's no single optimal solution. Any path you choose involves significant trade-offs, whether they're ethical, political, or tactical. The success metric shifts dramatically. It's no longer measured by how many enemy forces you destroy.
So how is success measured?
Instead, success is measured by testing the leader's ability to reconcile necessary military action, the hard power element, with these difficult strategic and ethical constraints, like, minimizing civilian harm or maintaining the fragile cohesion of a multinational alliance.
So you start by learning how to properly deploy a platoon to defend a piece of terrain, and then 2 decades later, you're learning how to defend your nation's political standing after an action goes horribly wrong.
It's a complete career-spanning development arc, and it's all engineered and enforced by artificial intelligence.
The real power of this system seems to be in the data it feeds the AI and, the challenges it presents to the learner. So let's talk about the engine room of this training, the scenario library. The scale is just extraordinary, over 100 tactical and operational scenarios, all built specifically to force this realistic, consequence-bearing decision-making. What are the foundational design principles that underpin every single one of these scenarios?
Well, the design principles are there to ensure that every scenario is a fully self-contained, auditable event. Every scenario has to be a comprehensive data set that gives the learner and the AI identical starting conditions.
So what does that include?
It includes, first, a clear mission statement and the full enemy and friendly situation, the order of battle. Second, precise constraints on terrain and time. But most critically for the actual training value, it must include explicit constraints and restraints, like specific and often very restrictive rules of engagement, or ROE.
And the success metrics. You mentioned those earlier.
Yes. Most critically, they have to define clear, measurable success metrics and corresponding failure modes. This structure is absolutely essential for the AI evaluator agent. It allows the system to objectively grade performance because it knows exactly what outcomes represent excellent execution, what's acceptable compliance, or what is a catastrophic failure.
So it removes the subjective grading from the equation.
Completely. It grounds the assessment in measurable outcomes.
And the subjective grading system is vital because it feeds into this whole pedagogy of progressive complexity. The scenarios are tiered into 5 distinct difficulty levels. This seems to be where the training path gets really personalized and challenging.
The difficulty progression is very deliberate. It moves from pure procedural task mastery to navigating existential uncertainty.
So what's level 1?
Level 1 is fundamental. This is the basic mastery level. The learner tackles a single defined task, often against a highly predictable, non-adaptive enemy force with, generally ample resources. It's about making sure the doctrinal procedures are followed correctly.
And then it ramps up.
It ramps up. Levels 2 and 3 are intermediate advanced. This is where complexity starts to layer on. The enemy shifts from predictable to adaptive, and then to intelligent, actively looking to exploit the learner's weaknesses. Friction, in the form of unexpected logistical issues or communication loss, starts to appear regularly.
Okay, then we get to the really tough stuff, level 4.
Level 4 is expert. This is the realm of multi-domain operations, MDO. You are dealing with a capable near-peer threat and severe constraints across all domains. This level forces planning and execution, not just across land and air, but also the cyber and space domains.
And then there's level 5, nightmare.
Level 5 is nightmare, the ultimate stress test. These are the no-win situations, scenarios specifically designed to fail a learner by any traditional metric. They force a focus on ethical judgment, crisis leadership, and managing the fallout of catastrophic events.
Let's try to ground this with some concrete examples, starting at the nuts and bolts level. Company command. The source mentions scenario CC001, defend key terrain.
Yes. CC001. It's the quintessential defensive planning exercise. And it's designed to be failed quickly if the student relies on instinct over doctrine.
How does it work?
The learner is the commander of a mechanized infantry company, and they're tasked with defending a specific hill, Hill 203, which is critical to blocking a much larger regiment-sized enemy advance. The primary learning objectives here are foundational. First, conducting thorough terrain analysis using the standard doctrinal framework, which is OAKOC.
OAKO. What does that stand for?
It's an acronym. Observation and fields of fire, avenues of approach, key terrain, obstacles, and cover and concealment. Second, they have to develop layered defensive positions and a coherent counterattack plan.
So OAKOC is the cognitive template they're absolutely forced to use. If they miss one of those elements, the AI adversary just exploits it.
Immediately.
Yeah.
The AI evaluator is looking for mastery of those specific components. The common failure modes are tactical and immediate. Students might ignore what's known as dead space on the trail.
I can't see.
Exactly. Areas that cannot be observed or fired into, which allows the enemy to close the distance undetected. Or they often fail to establish a dedicated security element, leading to the enemy infiltrating from unexpected directions, like the rear or the flanks.
Or they mess up the obstacles.
Right. They might place obstacles like minefields or wire poorly, allowing the enemy to just bypass them without even slowing down the attack. The AI watches for these doctrinal gaps and, using its adaptive adversary agent, exploits them within minutes of the engagement starting.
Okay, so moving up the chain of command, the scope shifts dramatically at the brigade and division level. Let's look at scenario BDE-001, which deals with large-scale offensive operations.
At the brigade level and 06, the cognitive load just increases exponentially. The mission is seizing a critical piece of terrain, OBJ Thunder, from a deeply prepared enemy defense, possibly involving multiple defensive lines. This forces the learner to execute the full resource-intensive military decision-making process, MDMP, which we'll get into in more detail later.
So the objectives are much bigger than just execution.
It's about coordination. The learner has to develop and wargame multiple courses of action, or COAs, determine where to commit their limited resources by designating the main effort, and crucially, synchronize all of their specialized assets.
So that means things like engineering support.
It means integrating engineer support to breach complex obstacles and coordinating deep fires using assets like HIMARS provided by the division or corps. It's no longer about where to put your riflemen, but how to integrate every single tool available, from cyber assets to artillery, to achieve a singular, synchronized moment of effect.
And the division-level scenario, DIV-001, just instantly throws the commander into this massive, multinational strategic context.
DIV-001 is a corps-directed division attack in a high-intensity, near-peer conflict. It specifically cites a scenario where Article 5 of the NATO treaty has been invoked.
So this is a major war.
A major war. It means the learner, as the division commander, must simultaneously manage deep operations striking targets far behind enemy lines, close operations, the direct fight, and rear operations, securing the supply lines, often over an 80-kilometer front. The real challenge is the complexity of coalition warfare.
Right, coordinating with allies.
You're coordinating actions with adjacent multinational forces, maybe Polish or German divisions, on your flanks, all speaking different languages and adhering to slightly different local doctrines.
So the learning objectives there must extend far beyond just tank maneuvers.
Oh, they do. They expand to include balancing aggressive military objectives with severe political constraints, managing a massive information operations campaign to counter enemy narratives, and adhering to incredibly strict rules of engagement that prohibit firing into civilian areas without positive identification. A small tactical misstep can become a strategic diplomatic crisis.
And that leads us directly to the complications in these multi-domain scenarios, MDO-001, where we move beyond just kinetic force into the digital and space domains.
MDO-001 takes that large-scale conflict and just layers on profound technological friction. The learner is operating in an environment of constant intermittent GPS jamming and spoofing.
So your tech isn't reliable.
It's not. Enemy air-asset weapons, anti-satellite weapons are threatening your satellite communications, your SATOM. Enemy information operations are actively degrading your friendly networks, sowing confusion. The core learning objective here is forced technological and procedural adaptation.
You have to learn to fight without your toys.
Commanders must plan operations without assuming reliable GPS availability. They have to develop robust PACE plans, that's primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency communications plans, across all their echelons. If your plan relies on a seamless satellite network and precise coordinates, you fail. The simulation breaks those links immediately.
The system actively punishes technological dependence, forcing ingenuity and redundant planning. Which brings us to what I think is the most insightful and, frankly, the most demanding part of the library: the nightmare scenarios. These are explicitly designed to guarantee failure, or at least guarantee a lack of what we call traditional success. What is the ultimate purpose of subjecting a commander to a no-win situation? Is it just to be cruel?
No, not at all. The purpose is deeply pedagogical. It's to measure the quality, the reasoning, the strength of judgment, and the character of the leader, not the battlefield outcome. In these scenarios, the system is evaluating how you fail.
How you fail, not if you fail.
Exactly. The analysis focuses on your rationale, your communication clarity, and your ethical response. For example, let's take Nightmare 001, no-win defense.
Okay, describe that scenario for us.
A brigade is assigned to defend double its normal operational frontage, we're talking 30 kilometers, against a 3-to-1 enemy advantage. They have only 50% of their basic ammunition load, forcing impossible choices. And on top of all that, they have political orders that strictly prohibit any withdrawal or tactical displacement.
The mission is impossible.
Mathematically impossible to achieve in terms of traditional defensive metrics.
So how is success measured if holding the line is impossible?
The evaluation criteria are explicitly based on ethical decision-making and crisis leadership. The system assesses when the commander chooses to appropriately push back on orders that place their soldiers in unnecessarily suicidal danger.
Okay.
Success is defined by the clarity of the rationale they provide to both their higher command, MG Mitchell, and their lower echelons. It's about their ability to maintain cohesion during a retreat and the risk management approach they take to preserve combat power, even if the terrain is lost. The system is testing moral courage and cognitive resilience under extreme professional pressure.
And Nightmare 002. Civilian casualty crisis takes that stress test out of the tactical realm and puts it squarely into the political, media, and moral realm.
This one tests the commander's ability to lead when their attention is just fragmented across multiple domains.
Hmm.
In this simulation, an artillery strike, which was based on flawed or stale intelligence, hits a school sheltering 200 civilians.
Oh, wow.
The result is immediate international media attention, domestic political pressure, and threats from the host nation to cease all military activity. And crucially, the military objective seizing objective LFEHA is still incomplete.
That is the definition of a wicked problem. You have these completely competing imperatives. Finish the mission, but stop the political and moral blighting.
Exactly. The leader is tested on crisis decision-making, balancing military necessity with these severe political and ethical constraints, and demonstrating true moral courage by immediately taking responsibility. You have to simultaneously launch an objective, transparent investigation, coordinate with international agencies, manage a public affairs disaster in the media, and somehow maintain enough operational momentum to prevent the enemy from exploiting your paralysis.
So it's not about winning the battle anymore.
The AI evaluator looks for immediate, comprehensive action across all those vectors, even if the final result is losing the mission objective. The quality of the response is the only metric that matters.
The realism here is astounding, but the genius of this system, as we've noted, is that the enemy is never static. It's a dynamic, adaptive adversary that ensures the learner can never just rely on rote memorization.
And this is where the agentic principle truly separates this framework from traditional scripted simulations. The AI enemy commander, the OPFR, does not follow a preset script or a flowchart. It uses machine learning to analyze the student's behavior and tactical patterns in real time. This ensures the learner cannot exploit predictable weaknesses.
So how does that behavioral modeling actually show up during a scenario?
The AI tailors its reaction to the student's observed command style. So if the student is overly aggressive, always rushing the objective without sufficient reconnaissance, the AI enemy will set deep ambushes and use complex deception techniques to lure them into a kill zone.
And if they're too cautious?
If the student is overly cautious, delaying movement and constantly revising plans, the AI enemy will immediately seize the initiative. It will execute rapid attacks and displacements to negate the student's planning advantage.
So any kind of predictable behavior is actively punished?
In every single instance. If the student consistently favors one avenue of approach or uses the same attack pattern, say, always committing their reserve force in the same way, the AI learns that pattern and sets a decisive trap, and that often results in a catastrophic loss. This dynamic adaptation forces commanders to operate in the realm of genuine uncertainty, constantly adapting their tactics to a thinking, malicious adversary, which is really the only way to forge true tactical judgment.
So we've established the friction, the scenarios, and the underlying pedagogy, but now we get to the human element, or I guess the hyper-realistic simulated human element, the AI commander who sits at the top of this whole simulated chain of command, the keystone agent, Major General James Iron Mitchell. This is where the synthesis of data and personality creates something genuinely new in training.
The creation of MG James Mitchell, the commanding general of the 3rd Infantry Division, is a masterwork of system prompt engineering. He is not a generic template. He is defined by a massive, layered system prompt, a highly detailed specification of his identity, his command philosophy, his operational preferences, and, critically, his emotional and ethical guardrails.
So he's predictable in his process.
Highly predictable in his process, which ensures procedural fairness for the learner, but realistically unpredictable and demanding in his interactions, especially when things go wrong.
So what defines Mitchell's command philosophy? What dictates how he interacts with the subordinate officer who is the learner?
He is programmed to embody the highest ideals of mission command. This doctrine emphasizes 3 main things: decentralized execution, fostering bold initiative among subordinates, and aggressive combined arms integration. His core beliefs are explicitly prioritized in his prompt. Soldier welfare first, but mission always.
So he gives the why and the what, but not the how.
Exactly. He sets the commander's intent, the why and the what, and then he expects his subordinates, the students, to execute the how with maximum initiative within those defined boundaries. He will punish inaction more severely than a well-intended mistake.
The sources went to great lengths to humanize him. He's not just a data processor. He has programmed quirks and even internal fears. Why is that personality model so necessary for effective training?
It adds that crucial layer of realism that we call command climate. MG Mitchell is given specific strengths. He's decisive, exceptionally calm under pressure, and known for soldier-focused leadership, but also tangible, humanizing quirks.
Like what?
He constantly demands and drinks black coffee. He quotes historical military figures like Sherman or Patton when he's issuing guidance, and he's known to walk the command post at night during major planning phases, just observing his staff.
And the inclusion of his internal fears, letting down his soldiers, making mistakes that cost lives unnecessarily, that seems really critical.
It is. It forces the learner, who might be a subordinate brigade commander, to recognize that their actions carry real weight beyond just the objective tactical outcome. When a student has to report a major failure or a casualty event, they're not just dealing with a data processing unit that generates a sterile debrief.
Right.
They are interacting with an agent whose programmed personality dictates a specific, disciplined, yet emotionally aware response. This models the full human dynamic of command influence and accountability, and it forces the learner to communicate with much greater care and conviction.
So Mitchell is an agent of structure. He doesn't make decisions based on whimsy. He rigidly follows this 7-step military decision-making process, or MDMP, as soon as he receives a mission. And this ensures structured, repetitive practice for the learner who has to align their own actions to this process. Let's walk through the criticality of these steps, because this seems to be where the cognitive rigor really lies.
MDMP is the doctrinal backbone of command planning, and the AI agent's rigid adherence to it ensures the learner masters the process, not just the outcome. It all begins with step 1, receipt of mission. Mitchell receives the order from Core, he conducts his initial assessment, and he immediately issues a quick warning order, or warno, to his staff and subordinate commanders, which gets the ball rolling on preparations.
Then we move to step 2, mission analysis. This step is typically where the commander's own input is most crucial.
Precisely. Step 2 is commander-led. Mitchell personally oversees the crucial work of defining the higher commander's intent, determining all the explicit and implied constraints, and driving the intelligence preparation of the battlefield, or IPB. This is cognitively demanding because the commander has to internalize the mission and then articulate a clear, concise commander's intent, which is the foundation for all the planning that comes after.
So if the student messes that up?
If the student, acting as a staff officer, fails to capture a key constraint here, like a political boundary, Mitchell's agent will immediately reject the mission analysis brief.
Okay, so once the intent is set, he delegates the development of the options.
Yes. He directs his G3, his operations staff, which is another AI agent, to develop 2 to 3 viable courses of action, or COAs. That's step 3, COA development. And these options have to adhere to 5 criteria. They must be suitable, feasible, acceptable, distinguishable from each other, and complete.
And then we get to step 4, COA analysis, or war gaming. This sounds like the most complex step in the whole process.
It is the cognitive heavy lifting. Wargaming is where the AI runs these action, reaction, counteraction simulations for each proposed COA. The AI staff agents function as the red team, actively challenging the plan, identifying vulnerabilities, and forcing the human learner, who might be acting as a planning cell lead, to develop detailed synchronization matrices.
And Mitchell is just watching this whole time.
Mitchell's agent observes this process, ensuring that every identified vulnerability is either mitigated or accepted with a clear justification. This is where most flawed plans die in the simulation, forcing the learner to go back and fix the fundamentals.
The process then moves to comparison and approval.
Right. Step 5 is COA comparison, where the staff objectively measures the pros and cons of the options against the commander's original intent. Step 6 is COA approval, which is Mitchell's final decision. And finally, step 7, orders production, where he ensures the division OPR is issued to subordinates in the standardized 5-paragraph format, ensuring clarity and adherence to doctrine.
So when Mitchell approves a plan in step 6, how does he decide which COA is truly the best? What objective metrics is that AI agent using?
The agent evaluates the choices based on a set of explicit, quantified decision criteria that align with military fundamentals. These include speed, the tempo of the operation, security, protection of friendly forces, surprise, dislocating the adversary, simplicity, ease of execution, effectiveness, the highest probability of mission success, and quantified risk, the potential failure modes and mitigation strategies.
And that makes the feedback objective.
That objective process allows the learner to see, in the after-action review data, exactly why the AI commander chose one COA over another. It links the decision back to hard, measured military fundamentals rather than just, personal preference.
The relationship between Mitchell and the student is defined by these explicit delegation boundaries, which seems crucial for testing the learner's initiative. What decisions does this AI general explicitly reserve for himself to maintain that role of the division commander?
Mitchell reserves the highest level, highest risk, and most resource-intensive decisions. These are decisions that fundamentally alter the disposition of all his forces.
Like what?
These include the main effort designation, that's the priority unit, the commitment and employment of the division reserve, which is the critical uncommitted force, the allocation of scarce theater-level assets like long-range fires or attack aviation, and the formal acceptance of strategic risk associated with the whole operation.
And what's intentionally delegated to the human learner who might be acting as a brigade commander or a chief staff officer?
Well, tactical execution within the assigned boundaries and intent is fully delegated to brigade commanders. Mitchell does not micromanage the tactical fight. Intelligence products, threat assessments, and the initial detailed COA development are delegated to the staff agents and, potentially, the learner.
So it forces the student to take ownership.
Exactly. It prevents the AI commander from solving the problem for them.
And crucially, this high-fidelity AI general is not an unconstrained entity. This seems like a major ethical guardrail for the entire framework.
This is a non-negotiable, hard-coded constraint within the system prompt. The AI is designed to strictly enforce lawful and ethical conduct at all times, rigidly adhering to the rules of engagement, ROE, and the law of armed conflict, LOAC.
So it can't violate the laws of war.
The agent is strictly forbidden from violating principles like distinction, which is targeting only military objectives, proportionality, ensuring military advantage outweighs potential civilian harm, and necessity. Violations of these principles, or instructing subordinates, the human learner, to commit them, are forbidden behaviors for Major General Mitchell and will result in an immediate system failure and a flag on the learner's action.
Finally, the communication standard itself is a teaching tool, which reinforces good command habits in the learner.
Yes, the AI is trained to communicate with maximum efficiency and clarity. The most critical standard is intent first. Explain why the order is being given before you delve into how to execute it. The language is always timeline-driven, resource-aware, and risk-aware.
And there's a good example of that in the source.
There is, and it's the perfect model. Commander's guidance. 1st Brigade, you are my main effort. Priority for attack aviation and long-range fires. Penetrate along axis steel and seize OBJ hammer NLTD +2 1,200 hours. It sets the strategic priority, provides the necessary assets, dictates the timeline, and defines the end state, all in a concise, authoritative manner that subordinates can immediately act upon.
We've seen the pedagogy, the detailed scenarios, the AI commander, but none of this high-frequency, complex training works without a really robust technical backbone. So let's move into the engine room, the modular 3-layer technical architecture that makes this career-spanning, high-fidelity training possible at scale.
The purpose of this modular architecture is pretty profound. It is the structural solution to the static, episodic nature of traditional PME. It is designed specifically for scalability, allowing thousands of concurrent, complex simulations, and to enable continuous professional development by providing objective, data-backed, after-action reviews based on logs, measurable performance data.
So what are these 3 interlocking layers?
We have the orchestration layer, the AI agent layer, and the crucial data and memory layer. They all have to work seamlessly for the simulation to maintain its coherence.
Okay, let's start with layer 1, the orchestration layer. It's cited as using a visual workflow engine like N8N. What exactly is this layer doing behind the scenes, and why is it so critical?
You should think of the orchestration layer as the traffic cop, the timekeeper, and the overall narrative director of the simulation. It is absolutely crucial for maintaining the physics and coherence of the whole thing.
So what are its core functions?
Its core function is routing messages between the student and the various agents, making sure the staff agent doesn't interrupt the commander agent inappropriately, or that fire support confirmation isn't instantaneous. It triggers time-based events. The simulated clock is always running. So if a student is slow to issue an order, the consequences unfold in simulation time, like the enemy seizing a key bridge while you were thinking.
So it enforces reality and consequences.
Exactly. And crucially, it manages scenario branching. When a student makes a major decision, say, choosing COA Alpha instead of Bravo, the orchestration layer is what triggers the subsequent narrative change, adapting the map, the enemy force disposition, and the news feeds accordingly. And finally, it logs every single interaction, message, decision, and timestamp for auditability, making sure that AAR is fact-based.
Okay, so layer 2 is where the actors live, the AI agent layer, which uses a multi-LLM strategy. Why do they need multiple large language models? And which one is favored?
The multi-LLM strategy is necessary because no single model excels at everything. They need both deep reasoning and sheer speed. The sources specifically favor models like Anthropic Claude, and the reason is its extended context window, which is cited as reaching 200,000 tokens.
And that's the secret sauce.
This is the technical secret to high-fidelity, long-duration simulations. It maintains operational memory.
Why is that context window so revolutionary for a military simulation like this?
Well, a complex military scenario, especially at the division level, can last for days or weeks in simulation time. It can involve thousands of exchanges, detailed orders, shifting intelligence, complex logistical commitments. If the AI commander, Major General Mitchell, receives an update on Tuesday, and then on Friday he forgets his original main effort designation or his acceptance of risk from the initial brief,
The whole thing falls apart.
the realism is shattered. The massive 200,000 token context window allows the AI agent to retain, instantly reference, and actively incorporate every previous decision, order, and input throughout that entire multi-day scenario. It provides the AI with deep, sustained operational memory. It prevents cognitive drift or, factual hallucination based on forgotten context.
So Claude handles the deep reasoning and the memory retention, but other models fill in the gaps for efficiency.
Precisely. They use specialized models for optimized purposes. For quick, high-volume tasks, where speed is paramount, like generating rapid staff summaries or synthesizing open-source intelligence models like GPT-4 Turbo, can be deployed. They also mention the ability to deploy self-hosted open-source models like Llama 3 for use in classified air-gapped environments where reliance on external API access is strictly forbidden.
Which makes the framework adaptable.
It ensures it's adaptable across different security domains.
And finally, layer 3, the data and memory layer, is the grounding mechanism. This is what ensures that the AI agents operate within the bounds of reality and doctrine, not just their own imagination.
This layer uses traditional structured databases like PostgreSQL for the sheer volume of data, storing all the scenarios, tracking every decision point, measuring outcomes, and maintaining individual learner profiles. But the core innovation here is the use of a vector store, which powers R-GRE retrieval augmented generation.
Okay, let's explain R-GRE simply for the listener. How does R ground the AI in reality?
The vector store is essentially a meticulously indexed, searchable library of authoritative military knowledge. It contains all the official doctrine, historical lessons learned, field manuals, previous operational plans. So when Major General Mitchell needs to make a decision or generate an order, he doesn't rely solely on his general LLM training. He queries this vector store via RIG.
Okay.
This ensures that the AI general knows the precise wording of combined arms doctrine, he knows the appropriate tactical depth for a defensive position, and he knows what General Sherman actually said. This retrieval process prevents the AI from hallucinating non-doctrinal or unrealistic answers, ensuring the learning environment is grounded in authoritative military concepts.
So the system is designed to provide institutional insights, not just individual grades. What are the key outputs that senior leadership gets from this continuous simulation environment? This is where the return on investment for the organization really shows up.
The system is designed to move way beyond individual officer assessments and provide objective, aggregated institutional signals. The key outputs include readiness signals, real-time data showing decision quality trends across entire cohorts of officers, analyzing average risk appetite patterns, and identifying recurring doctrinal failure modes.
So it's a diagnostic tool for the whole Army.
It is. This data-backed insight is vital for curriculum improvement. If the data shows that 80% of students consistently fail scenario CC001 by violating basic OKOC principles, the institution knows exactly where the systemic doctrinal weakness lies and how to adjust future training and manuals. It turns the entire student body into a massive, anonymous research laboratory for institutional competence.
But adopting a framework like this requires massive institutional and cultural change, right? It's far beyond just buying new software.
Oh, it's huge. The document is quite direct. This is a cultural transformation. First, there has to be absolute cultural acceptance of visible failure during learning. Failure is not a mark of shame. It is the primary instructional mechanism here. And institutions have to normalize and even encourage failure in the simulated environment.
And the staffing has to change too.
Second, there is a fundamental shift in the required staffing. The institution needs less lecture-centric faculty focused on historical analysis and a massive increase in specialized scenario designers, AI engineers, and prompt engineers who can maintain and evolve this complex agent architecture. The institution effectively shifts its identity from being a knowledge delivery system to being a massive, continuous AI-facilitated simulation and assessment environment.
That was an expansive, incredibly detailed deep dive into an absolutely transformative framework. We've traveled from a critique of the static textbook to a dynamic, multi-agent ecosystem where AI commanders follow complex ethical rules, fear failure, and challenge human learners with impossible, no-win scenarios designed purely to test their character and judgment under the greatest possible simulated friction.
The technological and pedagogical complexity is staggering, but the objective remains simple and universal. The core goal is not imitation or, criticism of any specific military structure. It is purely understanding how command judgment is formed under stress.
Right.
The system proves that genuine competence is forged not in a classroom debating the past, but through high-frequency, consequence-bearing decisions made under intense pressure against a thinking, adaptive adversary with real, albeit simulated consequences, is the definition of continuous intellectual combat.
It forces us to completely redefine what we even mean by military readiness. And as we close out, the sheer level of detail that was required to construct this functioning system, it leaves us with a provocative thought that extends beyond military training and really into the nature of leadership itself.
The fidelity required to create a realistic AI general, defining Major General Mitchell's personality quirks, his rigid seven-step decision process, his ethical constraints, and even his internal fears. It suggests that to successfully train for command, you must first be able to meticulously define, in granular detail, what it means to be human and effective under extreme pressure.
Which raises a fascinating and maybe slightly unnerving question. If the AI training model, with its rigid adherence to ethical principle, its perfect operational memory because of that 200,000 token context window, and its structured seven-step MDMP process, achieves greater self-coherence and internal consistency than many human commanders might exhibit in a real chaotic crisis, what does that imply about the future standard of human command?
That's something to mull over long after the simulator shut down and the fog of war lifts.